In 2007, National Geographic published an article that captivated the imaginations of people around the world. It was about a place called Hoer Verde, or Green Valley in Spanish. The article told the story of a remote Italian village that had vanished into thin air. That is to say, it seemed to have done so without a trace. There were no signs of struggle or destruction. Its buildings were still standing, and its streets were eerily silent. The only indication that anything unusual had happened was the presence of a few abandoned cars and the lingering smell of stale bread in the bakery. The village simply appeared to have been vacated in an instant. The story spread like wildfire, and soon everyone was asking the same question: where did they all go? The mysterious disappearance of Hoer Verde quickly became one of the most famous, unexplained mysteries of modern times. And even today, more than a decade later, it continues to fascinate people around the world. But what really happened here? Did the villagers suddenly drop dead in the street? Did they abandon their homes in the middle of the night? Or could something more sinister be at play? Welcome to my channel. Today we are exploring the strange case of Hoer Verde, the ghost village that vanished in an instant. Viewer discretion is advised for this video, as some may find the subject matter disturbing. The story of the missing village begins in the northern Italian region of Emilia-Romagna. High up in the Apennine Mountains, there lies a tiny valley surrounded by rolling hills and thick woodland. At the bottom of the valley, there is a small river which flows into a lake, and nestling beside the lake are two villages, both named Hoer Verde. There's nothing particularly remarkable about the name. In fact, it translates literally into Green Valley. But the name does hint at one of the defining characteristics of this place: its natural beauty. Those who visit the area today are struck by how peaceful it is. The dense woods are home to deer and wild boar, and the clear waters of the lake are perfect for swimming. With such idyllic surroundings, it's easy to see why people have chosen to make their homes here. Throughout history, small groups of people have lived in the mountains of northern Italy. But the first record we have of Hoer Verde dates back to the Middle Ages. Back then, the village consisted of just a handful of houses, which were huddled together for protection against marauders and bandits. But over the years, life slowly got better in the valley. The surrounding lands were rich with natural resources, and the people of Hoer Verde were largely left alone by outside forces. Eventually, the village grew to a population of around 100 people. Throughout the 18th century, life went on much as it always had. The locals farmed the land and fished in the lake. They celebrated religious festivals and prayed at the local church. Then in 1903, a major event took place that would change everything. A train line was opened between the nearby city of Bologna and a town called Forlì. This made it much easier for the people of Hoer Verde to trade their goods and also to travel outside the village. Over the next few decades, the village started to grow and prosper. More and more people moved in, and more businesses opened. By the 1950s, Hoer Verde had become a thriving community of around 400 people. The future looked bright, and the villagers began to dream of a better life for themselves and their children. Then, in the 1970s, disaster struck. First, the train line that had once been such a boon to the village was closed down. Then the nearby factories began to shut up shop too. Without the jobs that these businesses had provided, many of the younger villagers were forced to move away. The average age in Hoer Verde steadily increased until eventually it was home to just a handful of elderly residents. By the late 1990s, the village was effectively a ghost town. Many of the buildings were dilapidated, and most of the streets were empty. The remaining villagers knew that they couldn't keep the place going much longer, and so they started making plans to leave. Some of them bought homes in nearby cities. Others retired to care homes. As for the rest of the buildings, most of them were sold to private buyers, while others were left abandoned. In the end, when the last few residents finally packed up and left, the entire village was sold to a real estate developer named Diego Novelli. He paid just 30,000 euros for the lot, and then he turned his attention to making a profit. His plan was to renovate the existing buildings and turn them into holiday homes. But he soon discovered that this would be much harder and more expensive than he had anticipated. Instead, he decided to hire an artist to design and paint murals on the walls of the abandoned houses. However, after the artist had spent weeks working on the project, the council stepped in and put a stop to it. Apparently, the paintings weren't to their standard, and they didn't want them cluttering up the view of the valley. At this point, it looked like Hoer Verde was doomed to remain an abandoned ghost village. But then, Novelli got another idea. He contacted National Geographic and asked if they would be interested in publishing an article about his strange property. The magazine agreed, and in 2007, the article titled "The Mystery of the Vanishing Village" appeared in print. It was accompanied by haunting photographs of the deserted village and its crumbling buildings. Before long, thousands of tourists were flocking to the area, eager to see the ghost village for themselves. Many of them wondered aloud if the place might be cursed. Even local legend speaks of a curse that was placed upon the village centuries ago by a band of gypsies. They claim that a wealthy landowner had mistreated one of their members, and in revenge, the gypsy put a curse on him and his descendants, dooming them to wander the earth for eternity. Of course, these are just stories, but they show how easily the fertile imaginations of outsiders can conjure up terrifying ideas about a place like Hoer Verde. But despite the ghostly reputation, there was money to be made here. And so Novelli threw himself into making the village a tourist hotspot. He set up guided tours and even organized paranormal investigation weekends. He also charged a nominal fee to anyone who wanted to explore the village independently. But as the years went by, the crowds grew bigger and rowdier. Tourists started venturing inside the abandoned houses and even stole some of the lead piping. Then one day in 2012, authorities arrived and shut the place down. They deemed it unsafe for visitors and told Novelli that he had to repair the buildings or tear them down. To make matters worse, the local council decided to take over the site. They told Novelli that he had to remove his signs and that he was no longer allowed to organize tours or charge people for admission. To this day, he bitterly resents the council for ruining his business. But he claims that he has no hard feelings towards the villagers. He even keeps a collection of letters that he received from people who lived there, thanking him for keeping their homes safe. So what really happened to the people of Hoer Verde? Well, we know that many of them passed away and were buried in the local cemetery. But that doesn't account for everyone. What happened to those whose bodies never made it into the grave? The truth is that none of us will ever know what happened here. All we have are theories. Some people claim that the villagers were wiped out by a sudden illness. Others believe that they were victims of a crime, perhaps murdered and then thrown into the lake. Still, others think that they all left the village in a panic, fleeing from some unknown danger. Maybe the ground beneath their feet gave way and swallowed them up, or perhaps an earthquake struck and shook the valley. After all, Italy is one of the most seismically active places in the world. But maybe, just maybe, there is something darker at play here. The missing village remains a popular destination for ghost hunters and paranormal investigators. And every year, more people come to Hoer Verde hoping to uncover the truth. What do you think happened here? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. And don't forget to subscribe for more videos like this one. Thanks for watching. See you soon. Bye.